Hello, good day. I'm Andre, and I'm welcoming you once again to my essential words literature and words literacy engagements, series of publications, articles, critical thinking frames, lectures, and discussions. Today, we are continuing with our series of publications that concern Imazighen literature and literacy. So in my former publication on YouTube channel, I have stated that this literature really historically has been demolished in order to take its peripheral place in the sphere of marginalization. Imazighen, as we have already said, that this is a plural of Amazigh, which means many peoples, which means Berber peoples, have faced identity crisis, especially nowadays with the Western influences all around the world. Writers, the public, and even the Berber community are all in kind of an obscurity. So this literature is presented in two modes of, let us say, by Hegelian way of aesthetic influence, aesthetic engagement, and aesthetic production. And these are oral literature and written literature. And in the past, as we are now dealing with the very beginning of this literature and its characteristics and uniqueness, the latter was regarded as prestigious, having been included in world literature, the universal novel, The Golden Ass, written by Apuleius in his masterpiece book of Metamorphoses. So this literature is currently in the minorities and has minority status. It is distinguished by a vacuum at the levels of literary criticism, of literary creation, of literary identification, and also community. Amazigh literature exists nowadays, no matter if, as I have already stated, it is very, very lowly and lousy treated and discussed, and really survives in a kind of obscurity in the space between, let us say, in a Hegelian way, existence and non-existence, between being and non-being, the present and the past, oblivion and memory. So its status and its significance nowadays, unfortunately, is weakening. Berber culture has gone through many identity crises, nowadays in particular. And these identity crises can be attributed to the historical cycle of harsh and disgusting and pretty much barbaric Arab invasions. The literary movement towards Amazigation or Amazighization, as new and modest and pretty much innocent as it is still negotiating the status of discipline, if you want, at Moroccan and Tunisian universities. Yet it has been labeled as a literature of nothingness in a sense of Jean-Paul Sartre's definition of nothingness, that it lacks literary theories, that it lacks literary notes, that it lacks literary values, that it lacks analytical tools. So further to these, it suffers from a scarcity of readers, and also it suffers from a scarcity of producers. The Berber community has selected Europe as their country of origin since it is a region of democracy, allegedly human rights, and literary delights. As a result, Berber compositions and Berber songs can freely circulate in France and also throughout Europe. It must be also assumed that the process of globalization of Amazigh literature would come from Europe as well. For Berber speakers, such as authors, Imazigh, singers, poets, rhapsodes, and political immigrants, the notion of Eurocentrism is quite a utopian goal. It's like a fabulesque or a nebula. In other words, with the mondialism of literature, Amazigh literature would have a new horizon of anticipation in Europe. So when we are seeing this kind of relatio, if you like, this kind of relationship between what we are calling now European literature and Amazigh literature, it seems like unfairly that Amazigh literature is all the time present, but always put into some dark corner to wait for its better moment to come out on the surface. I shall be making further in my outgoing publications selections of poetry and beautiful selected poems of Imazighen authors and poets, and it will really highlight this North Africa's historical, cultural, and literacy stakes. The fundamental issue is politically organized in the form of Berber's past being forgotten. But it is quite paradoxical that even Berber's present has already been forgotten. So the Berber people, as it seems like, do not belong any place or anywhere. But the Berbers are very skeptical due to the lack of political involvement. And similarly, at the level of scientific studies, scholars are forbidden from critiquing the sacred text of Quran, since this constructed model violates anthropological research criteria. The Quran's presence contradicts Berber identity, and this is something which we need to highlight and to put forward, and not to be forgotten, to be all the time mentioned, that the Quran's presence and the Quran's influence contradicts Berber identity and Berber voices of being fairly evaluated and fairly positioned in the frame of European and world literature. The latter is a mission aimed at eradicating North African Berber culture, and researchers in Morocco are reluctant to deconstruct anthropological topics in order to uncover and unveil the demise of Berber civilization. Europeans are well aware of this concept of universal and, let us say, all in one, all around Arabization, which is why Pernet, David Hart, for example, Salim Cheika labored for years to make scholarly products and efforts to put Berber literature on its right place. In order to spread this philosophy in North Africa, the terrorist and barbaric invasion of Arabs into Berber kingdoms was regarded in Islam as the opening of any culture to make peace. So the famous Quranic phrase, either you become Muslims or we will rape your daughters and women and burn you, exemplifies the harsh Arabization process drive aimed at the Berbers. So nonetheless, we will see that they simply came to kill, to demolish, to rape and conquer Berber country, and especially to impose their way of living, their modes of believing, their religion, and their modus operandi and modus vivendi on Berber regions and Berber populations. So, in brief, this is something which we shall highlight and accentuate every while, because it is important to make a notion that there were gigantic efforts, and unfortunately pretty harsh and barbaric, to demolish and to destroy Berber civilization and its vital premises. So we shall deconstruct historical Berber figures in order to um, confront the East's false estimations. And furthermore, we shall discover to what degree Islam has been a poison of treachery for the Berbers. So we shall rather, at this very point, and just to begin, to highlight some of the Berber world's lost figures that are in our ongoing discussion, um, pretty vital. And what exactly are the Berbers, and where are the major figures from Amazigh history? So we shall be naming those protagonists and also antagonists when we are speaking this harsh Arabization drive that was imposed onto Berber regions and culture. We have Berber writers in Latin language that I already mentioned in my former publication, and these are Terence, Apuleius, Florus, Lucius, Annius, Cornutus, Fronton, Minucius, Felix, Terentianus, and Fulgens. Also, we have pagan Berber writers, Apuleius, and his famous work Metamorphosis, or the Golden Ass. We have Florus, historian. We have Fronton of Cirta or Curta, writer, teacher of the wisest emperor Marcus Aurelius. We have Manilius, Latin poet and also astrologer. And we have Maximus of Madura, who was orator and grammarian. Also, we shall be mentioning some Christian writers, such as was Minucius Felix, a Latin writer, Arnobius, author of Adversus Nationes, Lactantius, Christian rhetorician and pupil of Arnobius. We shall mention Posidius, bishop at Calama, which is present Galma in Algeria, a biographer of great philosopher and writer Augustine of Hippo. Then we have Marcianus Capella, writer. We have Firmus, we have Gildan, a Moorish leader, brother Firmus, who led a revolt against the Roman Empire. We have Adamon, we have Tacfarinas, we have Garmul, the king of Altava and military leader who launched several raids in the territory under Byzantine control, and these are the resistance to the Muslim invasions, the great Berber figures and historical individuals. And also we have Cabeon, who was military leader of Tripolitania, who defeated the Vandals heavily. So our research shall be pretty much a dense one, and also with many references, with many goals to read, with many um, sources that one may and might have been regarded or read or consulted. And also we shall put a kind of a research objective, and that research objective shall be to examine the issues also surrounding Berber literature in North Africa, where the Amazigh language is seen, unfortunately, as a minor language, if not inferior to the Arabic language. And these are all uh, unfortunate conditions and unfortunate facts that are steaming even today, the process of undervaluation and also disrespect of genuine and rich Berber culture. This point of view really corresponds to a failure to see, to understand, and to recognize the existence of an Amazigh identity. And according to this perspective, the Amazigh Berber language would lack true literature, resulting in the difficulties that the Amazigh writer has in his own region. And in this respect, the relocation of Amazigh literature to world literature appears to be an attainable ambition, however incongruous at first glance. Many works have received worldwide recognition before receiving local appreciation, and this is something that is also a kind of a negative um, element regarding evaluating Berber culture. Mohammed Chukri, a self-taught Berber writer, really here, when we are speaking about this, is a kind of an ideal candidate. And we will see what about the distribution of Berber products in France, which will in some way, in a morbid way, bring new life to Amazigh literature in the European society. So it is the desire of the Imazighen in Europe to create a world literature out of their cultural significance and out of their cultural fusion as well altogether. So we will demonstrate with this approach how the otherness, in this case European, is critical to the transmission of Berber culture in Europe. So in other words, we will emphasize the function of the marriage or connectivity of these two cultures, European culture and Berber culture, by demonstrating and showing that this one is linguistically and even historically close to that one, allowing us to get past the reception difficulty. And there will be a type of acculturation for any writer who transcends egotism, egocentrism, leading us to predict a world Amazigh literature in Europe, which will develop its European community and new literary products and also opportunities. So to fill the historical gap or the hole in Amazigh literature itself, there will be a connectivity of European literature and French literature, especially, and Amazigh literature altogether. So, furthermore, the fundamental purpose of this approach and this discussion is to provide a kind of a reflection on the possibilities of genuine Amazigh literature to be spread beyond its community borders, to be spread beyond its community of origin, so to reach a broader appreciation, a broader readership at the worldwide level with assistance from reception theory, translatology, readiness, and readiness as well. So before dissecting the difficulties of Amazigh literature, it is prudent to define the country. What exactly is the nation? And will there be literature without the national world? Is it true that the nation and culture define literature in general? Can we think of the people as a mirror of the nation? Can we think of the nation as a mirror of the people? The topic of nation building is firmly rooted in the historical experience and areas such as Civilization X, and nonetheless, the presence of communities is reflected in the nation's reflection. So, this connectivity, this mingling, this spreadiness, and these touchiness of meaning poses a fundamental challenge in positioning and understanding culture's essence. So, according to one scholar, it was Pascal Uri, the concepts of nation, the concepts of community, the concepts of culture, the concepts of people and globalization do create psychological uncertainty in heterogeneous identities. And this uncertainty of identity is the result of the challenge of political religion and also the processes of globalization, which has replaced the culturally nurtured. So we shall be involved pretty deeply, not only in a history of literature and literacy within Berber identity frame, but also we shall be touching many points and many features of cultural studies methods and also critical literacy points. And that is the way that we shall be tracing a kind of a argumented scientific studying um, in a connection of being Berber and also being European, or being European and Berber, vice versa. So this is something which cannot be over forgotten or taken as a granted fact or seen as something that is completely untouched and completely unconnected. Um, Political, religious, and social concerns are also important to approach as genuine and objective as we tend to be to this perspective. So we shall be really making a lot of efforts here to enter and to penetrate into the marks of the heart of Berber culture's cultivation as well as that of Europe.